So, welcome, Sylvain, Alex. Good to have you again. Today, we're going to be talking about CDNs, Caddy Server, caching. We spoke last year separately on different stream about CDN and the Skip2 networks, and also with Sylvain about Souin, I think, and Caddy. So I'm happy to go a bit deeper, at least now with the two of you, seeing both the customer part of Soin and also the creator. How do you feel about that?
Good. Yeah, I'm excited. We should maybe cover some basic stuff about caching first, and just about how it works,
Yeah,
why it's important.
yeah. So I think we have I mean, there are a few ideas I would like to go through, and like talk about Caddy, caching, see how Swing works, and also talk about how you use it for your CDN. But maybe before we get started, we can do a round of introduction. So I'm Peter. For those listening to me, you probably see me every other week. So I'm a software developer, freelancer at the moment, and Sylvain is based on France. So I'll let him do introduction, and then we go to Alex.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invitation also. So I'm Sylvain. I'm a French developer, so my accent is bad, but I'll try my best to speak my best English. So I'm a freelancer and I'm creating some open source projects, mainly in Go, but I have a background in PHP and other web stacks. So I think that's all for me, and I will let Alex introduce himself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Alex. I'm Alex Lee. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Skip2 Networks, and we're building a big content delivery network ourselves. And we're using a bunch of open source projects that are really important, like Caddy and like Souin. And we're running a big network already, so we can talk. I'll be able to speak more to that and about how you cache at scale. um,
Yeah.
yeah,
So should we start with the cache part or the self-hosting and talk about reverse proxies? How do you think we should go about this?
maybe if you start kind of conceptually and just sort of talk about uh, why anybody even has caching or what that even implies. There might be people listening who don't understand where caching happens. So
Okay, yeah, like we can get with that. There's also different types of caching. When you talk about caching, there are different layers of caching. So,
true, yes.
would you like to take that part, Alex?
Sure. I can talk a little bit, at least to HTTP caching. So, when you're loading a website and your browser makes a whole bunch of requests for the document and for different style sheets and for different images and whatever else, all of the things that can be used again, that are used on the next page or whatever, can be cached. A copy of it's stored somewhere more convenient than going all the way back to the server that generates the response. And so when we talk about caching, what we're going to be talking about today is involving caching when you run a web server in front of your application, right? So in our case, we're going to be talking about running Caddy and Souin in front of whatever our application is. But it also, there's caching everywhere. Your browser has caching built into it. So your browser is caching images and style sheets and stuff like that. And the whole goal is performance, is just making things faster, making things more efficient, keeping the network clear of congestion, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, all it is just keeping a copy of stuff everywhere, right?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned, like you said, there's the HTTP cache which your browsers respect, and then there's also the part of the reverse proxies that sits between the browser and most likely your application, things like Nginx, Varnish, Caddy, Traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this, you communicate how the caching should work through a set of headers in the HTTP request.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think it's cool. What's really cool about it is the fact that it is all the same. Like Souin reads those same headers, and your browser reads those same headers. And so they both act the same. They both are able to receive the same exact instructions, but they sit in a different spot physically in the chain there.
Yeah, and I think for things like probably Souin with Caddy, you have the Smax age, which you can specifically use to instruct just the proxies in between to cache this, or to use a different duration for the cache, different from the browser. So I guess that's what also Souin looks at, and not just if it's present anyway, right?
Yeah, but there are some differences between Smaxage and Maxage. So we fall back on the Maxage if the directive Maxage is not set, but that's only for the shared caches. So if you're not able to determine one person to serve this content,
Yeah.
it should be it should have the directive only Maxage because it's not on a shared caches. And now we have another headers with the X prefixed, not a real X, but a prefix targeted cache control. And we are able to say, okay, on this you can cache for 60 seconds, and on the browser you will cache for 1 hour, for example. So
What's the name of the header?
That's the targeted cache control. So you put, for example, CDN dash cache control either, and if your proxy can handle it, like Akamai or Cloudflare or something, some stuff like that, it will store for this duration and not based on the classic cache control either.
Yeah, but I don't know if that one is accepted. Like, or rather implemented by all the CDN. But I know Cloudflare already allows that, so you can have like a CDN specific cache control, like CDN cache control, different from cache control. But I think, like you said, it's like if you don't have the CDN cache control header, the proxy or the CDN falls back to cache control and then checks if you have Smax age, and if it doesn't, it falls back to the max age. So it's like different layers of caching.
Yeah, that's it. And with that, you'll have some granularity on your caching, and you can specify, depending on your needs, on which layer you will store for X seconds.
Okay.
So it's better.
Yeah, and I think they are, like you said, there's a whole lot to cover on the cache control header, so we won't go deep into it because you can also have like shared and private cache. So you also read those strings from the settings you give to it, which I think that works differently. But yeah, I don't know if Alex wants to speak more about that before we talk about something else, since you also work on the CDN layer.
Honestly, y'all have already talked about some of the newer stuff that I haven't even really thought about. We've mostly just been using cache control. That's what most of our users have used as well. That's what they're all used to already. And so we haven't started using CDN cache control yet, but we will. We'll be there.
Yeah, I also don't have any of my apps using CDN cache control, but trying to build or deploy my own image proxy. So I'm thinking of using that to prompt like Cloudflare and the likes specifically.
Yeah.
So we talked about caching, starting from the browser, and we mentioned like proxies. So maybe it's a good time to talk about web servers and reverse proxy, especially in the line of Caddy. So maybe Sylvain wants to speak more about that since it's more like his expertise.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we have to introduce what is Caddy. Caddy is a reverse proxy, written in Go, but it could be in another language. Highly modular, so you can write your own module and like plugins or extensions in Apache or Nginx. But you'll have to write some Go codes, and it's a reverse proxy, so it will take the domain name, for example, and it will redirect the HTTP request to the corresponding service. For example, a WordPress or something like that. And it supports the hot reload of the configuration, and it supports also the TLS on demand. So while there are no user on your website, you will not ask for a certificate. So there are a lot of features that are cool in Caddy, and we have the cache handler module that is the official HTTP cache module for that. So it's not in Caddy itself, but that's a side module that you'll have to load on your stack, and it supports the RFC, so the request for comment that drives how a caching system should work. And that's all for the presentation, I think. Yeah. I think I don't have to go deeper in
No.
or more
Yeah, I
technical.
think that's fine. I think that's fine for a start. But for Caddy, is that the only cache module that is available when you have to run Caddy?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
I think you hinted a bit about using like a cache module. Does Caddy have its own default cache handler or module, or do you have to load things to external ones?
There are no native cache module in Caddy. That's only an external module. So you have the cache handler that is the official one in the Caddy organization. And you have Souin, that is the development repository of the HTTP cache that is compatible with most of other proxies. But the cache handler is only related to Caddy. And you just have to build your own Caddy instance with the selected modules, and everything will be embedded in one binary.
I see.
So you'll have only one binary to deploy on your servers, and with or without the with or without the cache module, it will work on your servers. So it will be totally transparent for the end users if you have the X or Y module in your Caddy binary.
Yeah, I see. And do you have anything to add there, Alex? I was more curious to hear if you would speak more on the reverse proxy, since you mentioned reverse proxy, and also why would anyone want to use Caddy or any reverse proxy? Just to set the stage for folks that might not be familiar with those terminologies.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was a good explanation of them anyway. To give some use cases, if what we do as a CDN, a part of it anyway, is protecting people from attacks. right? And so if somebody wants to send some nefarious traffic to your website, some bad traffic, but it goes to one of our servers first that's running Caddy, we can do stuff to that traffic before it gets to Caddy. So if it comes in and we detect that it's bad traffic, then we can say, okay, well, this is bad traffic. We're not gonna let it go to Caddy, right? We're not gonna give it to the reverse proxy to carry the request the rest of the way. We can make a change there in course. We can also do stuff as it's coming in, and we can tell Caddy to process it differently as it's the reverse proxy. So we can limit it, or we could, like I said, rate limit or bandwidth cap, just to try to control the traffic going back there. So there's a lot of reasons that you'd want to use a reverse proxy. For us, it's protection, and it's to extend the reach, right? If we're caching on our reverse proxy, we want to be able to cache that in a lot of locations. And so that's why we would use that for our CDN.
And yeah, these days I see a lot of people going back, moving away from the likes of, like Heroku or Vercel, going back to the likes of Hetzner, DigitalOcean. So I see a lot of self-hosting these days. So some people are quite okay with, learning and getting set up. Some people don't know how this works. And a lot of them probably never use a CDN or a reverse proxy or whatnot. So how does this play into their stack when you decide to go self-hosting and different from trying to have your own CDN network?
Yeah, and I think people, when somebody makes an app, a web app in Python or whatever, and they go and they run WSGI or whatever the Python web apps are, or Python web servers are to run your app. I think most tutorials will even recommend, okay, now that your app is running on port 3000 or whatever, put a real web server in front of it, a real reverse proxy like Caddy or like Nginx, and actually use that for all your traffic. I think that's the most common thing that I see when I'm looking through tutorials like that, is that it's always like, okay, now that your app's running, put a reverse proxy in it, and that's like the final step to kind of, I don't know why everybody, I guess I do know why everybody does that. It's because HTTP is really hard and can be really insecure. But that's generally recommended when you're deploying, I think.
Yeah. For me, I think I would say it differently. I mean, obviously, what you said is totally correct. But I'm trying to think back to many years ago when I was also trying to, host on cloud VMs. Vercel, Cloudflare workers were not popular in those days. And before I started reading tutorials to set up a cloud VM, I was always imagining if I have like 5 Node.js or C# apps, and then they all have their own ports, and I'm running on one server, then I have to open different domains and all for all of them to get traffic. And then you realize, oh, there's a different way to do it. Like a lot of people get confused with that because they are used to setting up like a container, with a port, and then they have like a domain name or an IP address that just goes to their apps, when you're using the serverless platforms. But then when you take that mindset to self-hosting, you realize that, oh, it's different. I have to think of, I just have one server and I have to run all my apps on that server. So this reverse proxy now allows you to be able to direct traffic to all your apps you have within your virtual machine or your bare metal. And it does that based on maybe the host name or the ports or a couple of other factors.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. Apple's reaction is playing a trick on me. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly a great point. I mean, it's exactly right. And that's that same concept. The way that Skip2 is able to host tons and tons of websites all on these same servers, same exact thing. We have to have it by the URL we're able to route.
Yeah. So we've talked on on that. I think you mentioned something about having a simple solution in a complex world or something similar to that. I think you mentioned Alex. Uh, do you want to talk a bit about that? Because I think it might be related to self-hosting or doing stuff on your own, probably.
Well, I think Caddy is the simple solution for this problem. I've been doing a lot of the web server, been hosting websites since like 2009, which is not a very long time, but it's a while. And I'm dealing with. I know that you've probably more recently. I know you were doing a lot more stuff with Apache's web servers, with like Traffic Manager, which I haven't used, but just Apache web server or Nginx config files are just so much more difficult, so much more daunting. And I think developers don't, they want to focus on writing the app part. They don't want to focus on learning the ins and outs of some config file that's super dense and complex. I think Caddy's the big solution there because it's so easy to use, so simple to write the config for.
Do you disagree, Sylvain?
I'm contributor in Caddy, so I can only agree. I agree with Alex.
We need somebody on the middle ground to kind of. Yeah. But I agree. I think Caddy is quite. I think for me, I like the simplicity. In the past, I think I've done a bit setup with Nginx. The Apache I played with was Apache Traffic Server, so it's different from the regular Apache HTTP server. That one was more around CDN, so it was just me thinking around how to run like a CDN network, like a private CDN network. But I think some months ago I tried Caddy for the first time, and I like that it has like a JSON API you can just call on to do stuff. I know Alex does it differently, but for me it was very simple to start with because I was tinkering with the idea of being able to run like like on a VM, have a simple command that when I push a container, it should like set up like a Caddy route for it and know how to load balance it. So it was just simple to write a script that when the Docker container is ready, call the JSON API to set up the route, and
yeah,
you can do this within a few lines of code. Maybe ask maybe ChatGPT or something to help you get the code running.
Yeah.
So that's how simple I think it is. And I've seen a couple of folks who are trying to run their own reverse proxy or CDN network, try to enable caching, and they use Vanish. And then you read all those VCL files and all. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I'm fine with using JSON APIs.
Yeah, when I started this whole idea for this company like over 2 years ago, I really sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to just try every web server that I can find and just see what's going to be best. And so I tried Varnish with Hitch because Varnish doesn't terminate TLS, so you have to use another thing in front of it. I tried that. I tried Nginx. I tried there was some other one that was kind of newer, and I think it was also written in Go or Rust or something. But I ended up landing on Caddy. And I know you mentioned using the JSON configuration. What I still think is probably the most powerful part, not the most powerful, really powerful part of Caddy is the Caddy file configuration. And how short and concise and forgiving the syntax of that is. We still use Caddy file to generate our config files for skip2, and then after we convert the Caddy file to a JSON, then it goes out. But I definitely want to mention the Caddy file because that's I think when people look at when they look at a bunch of JSON config, that might look too dense to them, but the Caddy file is just so plain and simple.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I'm not as familiar with Caddy as you are. For me, it was more like the scaffolding, the easy point to entry for someone that, even if you are just a Python or Ruby developer and you never use the reverse proxy, I think the fact that you don't have to think about VCL or a Caddy format, even though it's simple, you think of JSON, it feels familiar, and it's not YAML. You feel fine, trying to set up your config. So I think, but for your setup, probably it's much more. I think, yeah, not everything is available with the JSON API, but for a start, I think it's great. Do you have anything to add on that, Sylvain, since you are like the chief of Caddy?
I don't like the VCL, so I won't promote Varnish here.
Yeah.
And for those who are running actually an Nginx instance, you have an Nginx adapter in Caddy, so you can load your own configuration written for Nginx, and it will try to feed the Caddy expectations. So it's one of the features that that bring us some new people that are switching from Nginx to another reverse proxy, and there are many people that discover Caddy with that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a good way to steal users from Nginx.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Yeah.
And if you don't like the Caddy file or the JSON, you can still write your configuration with any format like YAML, TOML, or some structured configuration files.
That's nice.
But you will lost the Caddy file features like matchers and something like that, and you will not be able to create some conditional directive and enable some directive if your request contain this header, for example.
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat, but before I go to the question, I was going to mention something. I think Alex mentioned regarding Vanish not allowing TLS, and I think either I know someone, the folks from changelog.com, they are also trying to have their own CDN in front of the public cloud CDN, because of the caching problems. And I think he mentioned that some modules are premium, like you have to pay a lot of money or to Vanish software in the company to be able to get them. So I'm not sure if it's related to TLS or to something else, but some of these things that you would get from Caddy, if you go to the Vanish part, you probably would not be able to do that using some free plugins.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I was trying to figure out where we wanted to go software wise, both Varnish, there's Varnish, the free open source version, and then you're right, there's Varnish Software, the company that sells the licensed edition that has all of the features and modules that we like. But the same thing is with Nginx. They also at some point said, okay, if you want all the modules that you were going to need if you're going to be a CDN, or if you're going to need all these extra features, it's going to cost like thousands of dollars a year. It's going to be a big enterprise license agreement. So with Caddy, that hasn't been an issue, hasn't existed yet. So it's great.
Yeah, we have the question in the chat, which I think maybe any Sylvain would be best suited for. It says, do you recommend hosting a static website directly in Caddy or in a Docker container with the website?
Directly in Caddy. So you can just mount your generated file in your Docker Caddy instance, for example, or just run your Caddy instance directly in your server, and you will just tell, okay, find the files in this directory and serve them from this. So I think it's not necessary to run a side container with the website. So it's more efficient to have all your files in at one place.
Okay. Yeah, good. So I think we could look at how to set up Caddy and the caching layout. Maybe you want to talk a bit about Souin. I'm not sure if I'm getting the pronunciation right,
That's
but
okay.
maybe,
That's okay.
maybe I don't know if Alex or you have something else to talk about regarding like self-hosting reverse proxy before we go into talking about Caddy and the caching with Souin and how to set them up.
Yep. Okay. So I can share my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
I still remember our conversation around building Souin, how you started building it without having full idea of the whole cache control RFC spec, and then the more you built, the more you
Yeah.
learned about it.
So for the history, I just started to write my own caching system because on my servers I was using Traffic, that is another reverse proxy, another popular reverse proxy, and because I was running some Docker containers with some up and down on my servers, and I was looking for a cache system, an HTTP caching system, because when you have a reverse proxy and some other containers, when your requests come in your reverse proxy, it will try to send a DNS request to find the container associated to this domain. So it will take 1 or 2 milliseconds, another 2 milliseconds to send the request to the service. The service will treat the request, send the response back, and the reverse proxy will send back also the response. And the responses were more often equals. So I was able to put some HTTP cache in front of that with something like varnish, but it would bring me another stack to maintain. And what I would like to do at this period was more put something inside Traffic, like I'm doing actually in Caddy, but it wasn't possible. And in the second version of Traffic, they allowed us to write our own plugins, and that's how I started to make Souin working with any reverse proxies. Yeah.
That's interesting how you started working on that, because I think also the story of Caddy Server itself. I think I listened to Matt speak about it in the podcast. Was maybe he was doing his masters or something, but he tried to use maybe Nginx and they were a bit complicated. So out of he had time and he decided to start writing his own server in Go, and he realized it wasn't that difficult, and then he kept building it. That's how he got to where Caddy is today, and then now he has more contributors. So it's nice to say that scratching your own itch kind of story.
Yeah, and it was the first project in Go for me. So I learned this language with this project. So if you go on the first commits, the code will be very ugly because I just discovered that I didn't know how Go routines worked, and
there was no AI.
Oh yeah. My AI was Stack Overflow, so not the best AI.
Yeah.
And when you ask something on Stack Overflow, someone come and say, "Don't do that." So that's not the best answer.
Yeah, let's get into Caddy and seeing how it all works with the caching layer.
Okay, so I have 3 files, but my Docker instance is broken, so we can't use Docker. So that's quite good. But basically, it will build a new Caddy instance using the CLI with Xcaddy. So you can just copy and paste that.
So basically, what it means, if you want to use the plugins or the middleware in Caddy, you have to run your own build. Like you have to compile
you
your
have
own
to
binary.
rebuild. Yeah, but there is another system in Caddy. For example, if you run /caddy, that is the new built Caddy instance. But if you download the plain Caddy instance on the web, you'll be able to register package. You have the remove package and add package. And now you can just say, okay, so Caddy add package and your package name here. And it will download it and add it to your Caddy instance. So, but that's an experimental command, but it should work in main cases. So we have our Caddy instance here that is a binary, and we have a Caddy file. So I will just explain it, and we will rewrite it just after to explain how it works. So we have some global directives. So default SNI will set your server name, and we enable the cache part because we built Caddy with the cache module. And we enable the Souin API to be able to purge the cache and other stuff like that. And for those who are not who doesn't know well the Caddy file syntax, here we define some non-3 points. Here's the server name. By default, it will be localhost. And here, that's what I talked in the past. It's a matcher. So it will enable the cache directive only if the header doesn't contain a cookie, commentator, or WordPress, etc. And with other conditions. And after that, it will serve the files located in /var/www.html. It will encode the response. And if the cache doesn't have in memory the result of the page, it will try to reach the WordPress container to get the response and cache the response. We enable the file server because we want to serve the index.php, and we send some log, and basically that's all. So it's working if you're using this compose file, but as I don't have a working Docker for this session, we will do a smaller example. So it will be fun also. So just create a main.go. We will create a simple.
Alex, you can ask questions if you. I know you were
learning.
curious. Okay.
I'm soaking up the information. Yeah. It was really interesting to see how you're handling different paths and headers, and specifically not caching ones that contain cookies. That was an interesting one for me. Yes.
that's because the Caddy file matchers are really powerful. And for example, some projects are using some SSE, so server sent events, and you have to register to an URL, and you can exclude this URL from the Caddy file, so your you don't have to exclude from the Souin configuration this specific URL, and that's more performant than using the Caddy the Souin configuration.
Oh.
So I will just say, okay, if you send me something on slash, I will sleep for 1 second and send something in byte, hello demo, and say, okay, it's an HTTP status okay. And I will register a server. So you will see it's really simple to write some Go code and create your own server in Go. And I don't have to register any handler. So I think I can run main.go here. If I try to request on localhost on this port on something, I have the hello demo, and he will sleep for 1 second, then return the hello demo. Okay, so now we can start the configuration of the cache. So I will say, okay, run.
Yep. Will it cache that since you don't return a cache control header for?
So for now, that's just a basic basic demo, and I will show more thing after that.
Okay.
So here I just have to do that. Say okay, if you don't have it, just send the request to this this service. So on localhost on this port, and I think that should be enough. And now we can run using Caddy run. It will target the Caddy file in the same directory, and that's not default SNE. I don't need that. I will enable the debug. Okay, so the server is running. We can see we have the cache handler that is running too, with a simple in-memory storage. And now, if I send on localhost on something, it should proxy to our server. So it takes 1 second, and if I enable the headers, now it returns instantly the response with the cache status that say, okay, it has been stored for 2 minutes by default. That's it on the second request. Here is the key for the stored response, and we stored it in the default storage. So with that, you're totally compliant with the documentation, with the RFC. But what if we send a cache control no store, for example?
So since we didn't puts like a cache control to 32 cache, does it
Yep.
mean that the RFC allows this proxy to automatically cache the response even though it wasn't specified in the cache headers?
The RFC doesn't specify anything about that. So every caching system are free to say, okay, we will cache it or not. If you don't return any cache control headers.
And what's the setup for Souin here?
By default, it will store. If you don't send any cache control header, it will consider it as cache control public.
Okay. And does this apply to every kind of response, or it's just maybe to like HTML and CSS files?
Everything.
Okay.
Every HTTP response. So you can return some JSON, HTML, CSS, or whatever. As it's just HTTP, it will just look for that in every request. But you can say, okay, enable the cache with a custom matcher, CSS matcher, for example. You write your matcher here to say, okay, if it tries to load only CSS, store it in this matcher and say, okay, run the cache only on the CSS matcher.
Okay.
Okay, so I can restart this, and I will also restart Caddy. So on the first request, we will still have the 1 second timeout, and now we can see we have a forward URI miss because on the first request we don't have it in our cache system, so that's not a hit, and we can see that there is a no store directive, so we can say where, so in the response. So the cache is not able to store the response because of the no store directive.
Okay.
And in the logs, you will also have something. Okay, I don't see it in the logs, but it should be logged if I did my work well. Okay, so here you have a very basic caching system for your Caddy instance with 5 lines of configuration. That is fewer than the Nginx, and you can just reduce it to this, and it will enable the cache, the default cache, only for localhost. Because if you define on the global variable, global directives, you define some configurations, it will extend in your root directives. And if I want to override the fact to display to enable the Souin API path, so I have to explicitly say enable false, to disable for localhost only the Souin API.
Okay, so basically the global config applies to all the services or routes, and then
if you
for each
don't,
of them,
if you're not overriding the subdirectives, it will take them back from the global configuration.
Okay. Now I know why Alex likes Caddyfy.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think and I'm sure that you'll touch on it and you'll mention it more, but I know what I see a lot on like Reddit is people are talking about like, okay, well, I got Souin running, I think, but like I also am running Redis right now and I'm trying to get it to hook up and it's not hooking up and I don't know. People seem to be confused about the storage of it all. It's really awesome that Souin now has this simple in-memory storage by default. I think that's fantastic. I think people are going to love that. But maybe if we want to talk about the different options that people have, like Redis, like I know there's a ton of different storage options now.
Yeah. So I will prepare the screen, the GitHub page on the right. So in Souin, you have the default storage, as Alex said, but you have other storages available, and they are all here. So you have Badger, that is another in-memory storage that is faster and safer than the default one. You can store your responses in etcd, a Redis instance or another one, because they don't use the same library to discuss with Redis. And you can store your responses in NAT or only on disk. That is a page feature in Varnish, but free in Caddy and Souin. And you just have to run this command. So that's also some Caddy modules. So you can run xcaddy build -- and your storage.
Okay.
So you can load more than one storage too. So you can say, okay, I will build my instance with the simple FS for my admin container, for example. But for my website, I prefer to store everything in Redis. So I will build with Go Redis and simple FS. And that's highly modular. And by default, if you try to load it in your configuration without, I will just show that. For example, if you're using Redis, you'll be able to set up to configure it like that. Localhost, something like that. And for this one, if we say, okay, that's localhost /admin, I want to use the simple FS, I think, and say, okay, your max directory size is 1 GB. And if your simple FS doesn't exist, it will fall back on Redis. And if it doesn't exist too, it will fall back on the in-memory, the default in-memory, right?
I think that's a nice, I think some other places would have been, when the one you define doesn't work, it just fails. But I like the whole fallback scenario where if I made a mistake, then I know, okay, it's not all catastrophic. I can fall back to in-memory.
Yeah, and in Caddy, you have the hot reload configuration that is a graceful hot reload. So if it will try to reload as a blue-green loading. So it will keep your app until the next configuration is loaded. So if your configuration loading crashed, it will keep the previous instance running. And you can iterate until your configuration is really working.
Okay.
So you will not have any timeout or internal server error due to a bad config. Expect if you down your Caddy and try to up with a newer configuration.
I like that fallback system.
Yeah.
I don't know how Alex deploy some instances of Caddy with or another configuration if he uses this system, this blue-green configuration loading or not.
So whenever we reload config, which currently is every 60 seconds, every server in the network pulls a new config. It gets a JSON file and we just run that reload command. So we do get that benefit, and that's been huge before because we've definitely pushed bad configs before where Caddy is no longer happy about it, but we don't lose any packets. We don't drop any requests. The old version is still running. Yeah, that's saved our bacon several times already. And same with your fallbacks for your storage providers in Souin, where we've had Redis fail or Redis cluster fail out or whatever. It's basically transparent to to our end users because it just fills up the in-memory cache and it's done. It's the same as usual. So yeah, really the crazy powerful features that are, I guess they're a little bit niche to have all this redundancy and failover a little bit, but it's great for everybody.
Yeah, and that failover is something that you rarely see in software systems these days because people just assume when you specify a config, it has to be correct. So there's no failover mechanism, and I like how that was quite thought about in Caddy. Do they know you are building like a CDN on top of Caddy? Because I think one of the last conversations I listened to with Matt talking about Caddy, I think they don't know anyone running a CDN with Caddy because the major guys either use an optimized version or a different tweak of Vanish, or I think maybe also Nginx, but I think Cloudflare is moving to maybe build their own proxy with Rust.
Yeah.
So might be nice if they
Cloudflare
know
uses Cloudflare definitely uses their own reverse proxy. I forget what it's called, but I remember looking at it and I thought I was impressed with it. It's definitely written in Rust.
But I wasn't sure if it was deployed globally or it was still like experimental.
I guess, yeah, you might have to talk to one of their network guys to know for sure. But I know that they were publicizing it pretty heavily at one point, so that's exciting. And then Fastly, I know Fastly uses Varnish, right? Netflix, they run their own private CDN and they're using Nginx still. A lot of Nginx. I know I haven't talked to Matt a ton directly. I haven't had a lot to say other than thank you for everything. Thank you for everything you're building. Like, we're a sponsor on GitHub and stuff like that, but it's not, once we're there and once we have a bunch of customers and some money, I'm going to get much more involved in giving back to these open source projects and making sure they're aware that we exist and we love what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I was speaking more besides the money part, which I trust you would do. It's maybe if they are aware, but probably since Sylvain is aware of it, he can maybe talk more about it. I'm not sure. I know some projects usually have like who uses it in production, especially for people trying to see what skill does this run. It would be nice to say, okay, here's an actual CDN, built on Caddy. And people don't have to think that CDNs are a mystery. Using this stuff, you always imagine it's a mystery until you dig deep.
Yeah, and I think we would probably be on their front page, but the logos on the Caddy Server website, of sponsored by or who's using us, are much bigger than us. There's like Stripe and Mercedes-Benz, and we'll get there one day.
looking forward to that. Also, you can go ahead with your demo. Hope we didn't take away your train of thought.
Yeah. So basically, that's enough for the demo. But there are other features. I will just get a link because you're able to access some Prometheus metrics or anything else. I don't know if it has been merged. I think it's okay.
So you can use that to monitor the logs of how the Souin cache is behaving, right?
Yep, that's it. So it's you can monitor it for since the beginning of the project, but now it's integrated in your Caddy admin URLs.
Okay.
So you can rebuild.
So Alex should find that valuable now because it gives him more insight into monitoring the system or the cache layer.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to, because we monitor all of our servers and everything with Prometheus, and we pull the log files. I'm just curious where you're looking. Are they exposed as metrics, or is it something else?
What?
Are your cache statistics?
Yep. Some cache served items. How many requests are served without being cached or something like that. So I have my new instance.
You wanted to drop a link, so which about the monitoring. Maybe you can leave it in the chat and Alex can check more later.
To monitor your instances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just on the Souin API. So just some bus passes. So if I run it, I should be able to access to localhost this one and Souin API. Okay, that's it, and that's metrics. Okay, so now on your Caddy admin endpoints, you have your metrics here, and you have the average response time for serving the cached responses, and the cache response counter, no cache response counter, how many revalidation we made since the last restart, and how many times we reached the upstream. So that's not the same as the revalidation, because the first request, for example, will increase this counter, and that Prometheus matrix. So you can add a Grafana to pull your metrics, and that's it. And you have other APIs, also the debug that allows you to get the memory consumptions and some details about your more slower functions in the code.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to trace some part of the code that is running in this instance. So that's it. I don't
think
know what to say more about it.
No, I think it's really good. It's just obviously it's a lot of information, and that's great. I actually did not know that Souin exposed Prometheus metrics. We scrape metrics from our Caddy servers already, but I haven't looked at any of the caching metrics apparently. So that's great. We already have the info. I could just start looking at it.
What's the endpoint for the metrics? It's just /metrics.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what I can do in the near future that is pushing the metrics here in this endpoint. That will be better.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean,
I
you have your test user.
Yeah. I think features are really helpful if it can help at least one user. So
yeah. And you get
in the next release,
feedback.
there will be this feature.
Yeah. I remember you mentioned around Christmas time that you have a bunch of bugs to fix on Souin.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was curious what issues have you seen play out over time, and what's the stability? What are you planning for it in the future?
Okay, I can just show the associated PR that was planned to be merged at the end of December, but was merged during February. That's the December 2024 wave, and it closed all of this. So it took a very long time to fix that because there was it was simple. This was tricky because I don't like to touch how the revalidation works, but sometimes some people discover some edge cases that are not entered correctly in the code and not clearly explained in the RFC. So that's one of the issues that took time to fix. And it was in this PR that I add the API endpoint availability under the Caddy admin URL. So that was some of my work I did during December, but I had another project to be able to run WASM in Caddy. And it took a very long time to read the spec of WASM. That's this project. And with that, you can load it as a Caddy module and run WASM scripts in it. So you can write your WASM binary code in JS or in PHP or anything else, and it will load it in your Caddy. And you can you can extend Caddy with your favorite language.
That's nice. I haven't tried WASM, but it's nice to see people working with it.
I had no idea you created this. This is really very exciting. My see me all perked up. I'm like, whoa, you made that?
That's not prod ready. Don't try it in prod.
No, I think Alex likes living at the edge, so he's going to probably be the one to give you the feedback on things that is broken.
Yeah,
we'll try it out. Yeah,
I would appreciate some feedbacks about that. But in fact, this project was created because Traffic released their version 3, and they introduced the WASM plugins support. But I think they badly implemented the WASM support. Because I have a lot of reasons to think that. They introduced some limitations. Your WASM plugins will scale, so it will create more and more instances. But if you have to share some data between your different WASM plugins, you're not able to do that. But this plugin allows you to share some data, and even if your WASM plugins scale and deploy more instances, so it's better, less maintain that their implementation, but that's just the beginning.
That's really cool. It's a really exciting project.
Yeah, but it took so much time to do it.
I can't imagine.
Especially having to go through the spec, and trying to be spec compliant. But do you have sponsors either from the Caddy project or on your personal? Because it looks like you're doing a lot of work around the servers and open source.
No, I don't have any sponsors because I think I have enough money, so I don't need more money, and I'm just giving my time to do that.
Yeah.
And that's just some kindness, I think.
Yeah, that's quite nice. I think probably like the way it works on the Linux project, but
Yeah.
I mean, you don't work on it full time, so you dedicate. You have a lot of other client project, and some of these are also from your own point of need. So I think that's easier to fund it. But I think Matt works full time on Caddy, and also he it would be nice to, he gets funding to keep working on improving Caddy
Yeah.
rather than having to worry about client work.
Yeah, but for example, Matt is an employee in Zero SSL.
Okay.
So, in fact, Zero SSL backed the Caddy project. To be sure, this project will be maintained in the
long
future.
run.
And if we go to Zero SSL, so that's this company that is hiring Matt.
Yeah, that's nice. I didn't know he worked there. I thought maybe I listened to an old podcast where I think he worked alone, and he was, looking for sponsors to, keep the project running. But it's nice. I see this pattern too these days that, companies employ open source builders, and it's easier for them to keep doing the work. Like the guys from Vercel has done that with some framework authors. And I think I see this too with some other people, which is nice.
But maybe I'm wrong, but for Matt, because so in fact maybe it's not a real employee, but Zero SSL is paying Matt for new features in Caddy, and it's the main backer.
I see. Yeah, that's very nice. I think it helps keep the project
Yeah.
going strong and fully focused. So I think that's a very
Yeah.
good system. And then you have the small backers like Alex that would in the future be big backers when they grow the product.
Right.
Yeah, that's nice to see how this all works with Caddy, and for me from what you showed, it looks so easy to just configure Souin and have all the the plugins, the different storage, and I
Yeah.
think might be a good time to talk to Alex more about how they use this product. Probably you maybe also have a lot of questions for Alex, since he uses it to run a global network to
Yeah.
see how this all works.
Yeah. we have it deployed generally. So how we run our network right now, we're not at a huge scale. We don't own our own network per se, our actual own autonomous system number or anything like that. But we rent servers all over the place. We usually rent more than one server, whether it's a virtual server or bare metal, or we actually have some servers in a co-location. But regardless, we always try to make it a couple of servers, and that way we run Caddy on both. We get the redundancy of having more than one there, but then we also have the benefit of, when we're using Souin with Redis, of clustering those Redis instances together, increasing the cache size and increasing the performance of it. Yeah, I don't know if we have any ultra special way of deploying it. I know one thing that we do that I know that we didn't talk about here. I bet it wouldn't surprise me, Sylvain, if there's a better way for us to deploy what we're doing. But when a request comes into our network, it goes to the server closest to the user. So I'm in Chicago. My request would go to Chicago. And then after that, it actually goes to one more hop on our network to a server closest to the origin service. So let's say the origin server is in Germany. Okay, it's going to go to a server in Frankfurt from Chicago. So my request goes my house, Chicago, Frankfurt, the origin service. And it's cached at both spots. I just wonder if there's a better way. Maybe we should talk about that offline or something like that. I wonder if there's a better way that we can deploy that internally for what we're doing.
And I had a question, but I just forgot it.
Okay,
sorry.
For me, I was curious more. You can think about it for a while, and then I'll just ask Alex regarding what he described. What if you go from the origin, from the nearest POP to the user, direct to the origin? Would that be an issue instead of going back to maybe the closest, another data center or network from you before going to the origin? Is there a reason why you can't do that?
We can. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but I found performance is better if we keep that long haul traffic inside of our network. Even though it's a VPN tunnel, it shouldn't be that different. But there's some added latency, it seems like, and there's some less stability, it seems like, when we're trying to do that proxying right over the public internet. However, there are some websites like our homepage and our blog. Those are both hosted on serverless services. One's Vercel and one's Netlify. And so for those, they don't have, there's no place where it's hosted. For those, the request goes straight from the user to the server closest to them, and then straight to the origin service, like you had proposed. Just because they're, Vercel's everywhere already, so just go wherever we can. It's,
Yeah, but that would be interesting to know that it's faster to go from the edge closer to the user down to another server from, because that's an extra hop I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole processing to also go to the origin. Except if
and
maybe it's faster for you because if you go to the second hub in the network and that one already has the cache, then it's faster because you can read from your own cache. Probably.
It's better because when we call that the tier 1 cache. It's the server closest to the origin. And there's definitely a speed improvement that data is being stored there. I think part of it too is the fact that we are the actual way that our networking providers have built out their networks, right? So like if you're going to, I can't give a great example right now, but for example, we use OVH a lot for a lot of our servers. When traffic is going between OVH servers in different regions, they'll route it differently than if that traffic was just going on the public internet. So it probably has a lot to do with the efficiency of the networks that actually power our network, if that makes sense, and the way that those physically come together.
Yeah, I think there's some kind of do they call it bandwidth allocation or something, or where they try to make it faster to connect between these data centers or ISPs, So if you're talking between these two ISPs, they have like a dedicated route that makes it faster. But
Yeah.
but if you are going outside, it's a bit slower because maybe they go through a different route. I think that could also play a factor. And then coupled with the fact where if users in Germany are already hitting your server, the other edge location in Germany, then you probably have a fresh cache in your storage. So instead of going direct to the user's origin, which will probably take more time to process, yours just returns the cache from there faster. And I think that could be the reason. And maybe that's also similar to what Cloudflare has in terms of tiered caching, where you have different layers.
Yeah. Yeah, the big reason for us to do tiered multi-tier caching, like we say, is just to increase the cache hit. Because if somebody, if nobody's gone to a particular website and they're in Chicago, maybe that cache is empty for that website. And we just want to avoid that as much as we can. So adding a second layer there that always gets hit with all the requests has helped, I guess, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a nice way to think. I would probably not do that by default, but the way we've talked about it now makes it look very easy.
Yeah,
But
it took
maybe
a while to get here and to figure out, okay, maybe we should do it multi-tier. How do we do it multi-tier? For a while, I had the problem of like periodic 500 internal server errors, where if you were in Chicago and being routed theoretically to the origin, the tier 1 cache, if that happened to also be in the same region as you, we were having all sorts of weird errors intermittently. It's been a long, long, long road to get here, but this so far has given us great performance, and it's given our numbers a huge. Our numbers look great now. Our cache hit ratio is like 98, 99% all the time.
that's nice. Maybe Sylvain remembers his question now.
Yeah, it was more about invalidation. So, is there a way that you can detect? Okay, we have to remove this entry from the cache. For example, if you send on an API a post request on a resource to create a new resource, you probably would want to invalidate your list. So I don't know if you are able to detect that on a CDN or not.
So yeah, we haven't gotten to that part of kind of it's almost like advanced caching. So no, we can't detect that at this point. Right now, the only purging or invalidation is manual, just based on URL. Yeah.
And you talked about the security to mitigate the requests. Are you doing some acting as a WAF or no?
Yeah, we.
Uh-oh, he's gone.
Yeah. I thought it was just on my side, but no.
Yeah, I'd be curious to also know what he uses for his firewall.
Yeah. I think it's based on Caddy, but
probably. Yeah, but he says before it gets to Caddy. I think he says they do the check before it gets to the Caddy server. So
also,
maybe it could be something with the provider, because some infrastructure provider usually gives you some part of this by default. So it could be part of the system. I think a lot of them do it by default. And then also there are also services where you can check the system.
I think I'm back.
Hey.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I thought it was time for your meeting.
Yeah, sorry. Right. What were we talking about? Firewalls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we do act as a DDoS protection. We use a web app firewall as well. It starts with our partner providers, our network providers who have giant networks that are like in the terabits of size, of capacity. They have terabits and terabits of capacity at internet exchange points or with their private network interconnections. So they can accept a lot of traffic. That's the first step. Second step is that they probably offer some level of volumetric DDoS protection. That's the very first like line of defense for those, is going to be our third-party providers. It's not even us. After that, we use FreeBSD. That's our operating system. FreeBSD by default, like OpenBSD, uses packet filter. PF is the firewall. Packet filter is really cool. It can do a lot of very powerful fingerprinting of the traffic as it's coming in. It has a built-in SYN proxy, so we can, if our network providers don't detect a SYN flood attack, for example, we would and mitigate that immediately. There's all sorts of other stuff that we can do to verify that this, the traffic is coming from an operating system that makes sense. It's recognizable. There's some TCP fingerprinting that we can do. And then we kind of are able to judge how risky traffic is, and we will send that to Caddy differently. We actually will use Packet Filter has a way of redirecting traffic. It's almost like NAT, almost, but you can actually have traffic coming in on a port, and you can say, okay, if this fingerprint looks nasty, redirect this traffic to go onto like a higher port, like whatever. And then when we go into our Caddy config, we can treat that traffic differently. We can treat it as risky, or we can even that's when you can get into bot protection, right? So we can say, all right, this traffic looks risky. Let's make sure this is a human by first saying, hey, you need to go check this box, run this JavaScript in your browser. I'm sure we've all seen that, checking your browser kind of thing. And then as a part of Caddy as well, we're using the Coraza web application firewall module, which is, I've only barely gotten into it. It's really, really extensible. But the default core rule set seems to work great.
And so for the bot protection, do you use it as a Caddy module, or there's something between Caddy and the network?
Right now it is manual, which is funny to say. So there's Caddy is checking for a hashed cookie that the browser should be sending, and that hashed cookie gets set by our little JavaScript bot thing. It's mostly still in testing. I've only put it on a couple of websites. Yeah, it's something that should most certainly be a Caddy module like that. I should probably try to make that into a Caddy module.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember these other folks. They tried to do something similar to Coraza. So they give you like both the firewall protection and the bots protection, and you can do this in code. I think they use Wasm as well behind the scenes, but you can do it. I don't know if they have a Go module, but they started off fully doing focusing on JavaScript SDKs. So you can check this on code. So maybe if they already have Go modules, it's something that you could write a Go plugin for Caddy and do this also within Caddy. But
yeah, I'm certain it would be. What we're already doing now is so stupid easy. It would be very easy for somebody very skilled and talented to implement that as a module. I think I just don't have. I am nervous about my ability as like a developer at this level. Like kind of this HTTP level is pretty important stuff. I wouldn't want to mess up.
Yeah, doesn't Coraza also give you bot protection?
It does. It has basically looks at the incoming requests. It doesn't have bot protection.
Okay, we lost him again.
He doesn't want to answer, in fact.
He's trying to trick us. Yeah.
So
I was going.
that's yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's really interesting to discuss with you about that.
Yeah, all the stuff he does with the network will be nice. But I think we are running out of time. So probably when he comes, we just try to wrap up so I don't steal so much of your time.
So that's okay for me. That's the weekend. So.
Okay. Yeah, but I think it's morning for Alex. You know, he's
Yeah. He has to work.
probably his boss is kicking him away from it. Yeah, but I think it's been a nice conversation, see, talking about caching and proxies and whatnot, and then getting into Caddy
Yeah.
and so and how it works. And now we are back on how he uses this on his global network with the CDN, how it works, caching validation. Uh, but he's avoiding some of our questions, so we can't really dig into it.
Funny,
Welcome back again.
the network guy doesn't have a good network at home, huh? What the heck?
Yeah, but we were just talking that it's probably taking too much time from you, because for us it's like the weekend, so we don't mind. But for you, it's like you have to go to work on Friday morning in the US.
No, it's all good. We actually, you know what's funny? I'm off on Fridays. So,
Oh, okay, that's nice.
yes. Yes.
Yeah,
But,
so I think Sylvain enjoyed the conversation a lot, given what we've been discussing too, and he asked about this last year when we spoke, like, hey, it would be nice to have like a couple of us on the call to talk about um some of these things, maybe not related to Caddy as well, but it's nice to finally have a session to talk about it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really nice to discuss with you, all of you.
Yeah. This has been so great, and learning so much from Sylvain directly from from the hand that makes it is so great. It's so nice.
Yeah,
Thank you both for taking the time.
yeah,
Thanks
it's
to you.
my pleasure. I for me, it's also more like learning a lot about from people building like you both. It's amazing seeing how you and also talking to you about how you use it, like building this, because people look at big companies like Fastly and all, and you can't really tell how do they build this big software. And that was also what started this YouTube channel for me. I was curious about how people build things and started talking to various people. And yeah, some of it went to page speed insight in a bit, and then I know some of it was also about DevOps. But it's nice to see how people are building stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about FreeBSD versus Ubuntu or Debian, because I never used it and never really saw anyone using it. So you mentioned it and it was a shock for me.
Yeah, I know. Performance is the reason, if you're wondering why. Performance on FreeBSD, networking performance, the tunables that you can do in syscontrol, and the stuff that you can do to TCP in FreeBSD is the reason that we went with it. It's very similar to any other Linux distribution. Of course, it is technically not Linux. It is its own thing. It's Unix, and it's running the BSD kernel.
Okay.
It's just like, I don't know how to describe it. I think it's very simple. I think Debian and Ubuntu, there's so many different things that Debian and Ubuntu operating systems are used for, right? You could use it for a personal computer. You could use it as a web server, and you could everything. FreeBSD, you can do the same, but when you first install FreeBSD, it has nothing on it. It's very minimal. And so you just kind of go and start building from a kind of a blank canvas. And I also find that there's very little that changes in FreeBSD. Whereas with Debian and Ubuntu, there's a lot of new things and new software, even sometimes like I'm trying to think of the thing that everybody's been complaining about in Debian-based Linux now is it's like a scheduler. It's something very important to the operating system. I forget what it is now.
KQ.
What's that?
I think it's something around KQ, probably how it does some queuing at the thread level also.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure if that's the same.
It's these big changes that that have happened in those operating systems that I don't have, like, we have not seen that in FreeBSD. It's been really stable and it's stayed very similarly, very the same for a long time. But it's really powerful. It's very well updated. And there's lots of big companies that are still using it for all sorts of stuff. So like Netflix is the example, right? Netflix's giant content delivery network, that's all FreeBSD based.
Interesting. I never really thought of trying it because also when you use a lot of containers, you don't see them, like, some of the big ones have, although they have like Alpine and some other smaller Linux system, but they usually don't build for FreeBSD. And the only time I see that mentioned is like IBM related stuff. So I just assume, okay, it's just for enterprise folks. I don't care about it.
Yeah. The first time I like heard of FreeBSD, it was writing switch and router configurations on Juniper switches and routers. They're network hardware. That's a network hardware manufacturer. And I don't remember why, but I ended up discovering that their entire Junos, which is Juniper's operating system for their network equipment, entirely is based on FreeBSD. And I'm like, man, if you can you're running the whole internet on FreeBSD on your routers. Like, I bet we could deliver content with it.
Oh, that's nice. I have to find time to go to look into it and try it. Maybe will be something. I mean, if you say it's fast in terms of the networking stack, maybe also the processing, then would be nice to have it running some of my stuff that I'm trying to do custom these days.
Yeah, I mean, just try it out. You might like it. It's not, for us, it was so important to have as much performance as possible. And I was always, starting kind of building from the foundation up. I was every step of the way thinking, what is going to get us the most performance? Or at least what is going to be the smallest bottleneck, the least problematic. And that's where I landed.
And how easy it is to get started with compared to like Ubuntu or Debian, just like I like Caddy because of the easy to start before going to advanced level. How easy do you also find tutorials for them?
You find a lot less tutorials for FreeBSD. I will definitely say that. There's a lot less tutorials. There's a lot less noise and excitement about it. But it is really easy to use. Okay. There's a package manager, just like apt in Debian and Ubuntu. It's called package. So you can just do pkg install caddy, and FreeBSD will go fetch it and install it for you. The file layout is actually pretty similar, pretty the same. You have like your bin folder, Etsy folder, var folder, user folder, home. So it's really not. It'll look pretty familiar if you go start poking around.
Yeah, maybe we should have a session where we try to set up a cloud VM with FreeBSD if you have the time for that, because I'm very curious to see how to go from zero to something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. Yeah.
I'll probably just make a note of it. Maybe catch you in the future about it again.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Any other thing you want to talk about, Sylvain, before let's wrap it up so that we go eat dinner and Alex can have breakfast?
No, I was thinking about going into FreeBSD or OpenBSD for my server. So I think your experience would be appreciated for that. Because actually I'm running only Debian on my server, so I would like to know more about that.
Okay, then I think we should have a live session to go. Hopefully the network guys are favoring Alex so he doesn't keep cutting off.
And yeah, with maybe a demo how you manage them, so your servers. And so for example, if you're using Ansible or anything else to deploy some configurations, and your recommendations about the management of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we should definitely, okay, we have to do an episode about this now, for sure. This sounds like a great idea. We do use Ansible. We do all sorts of cool stuff with Ansible and keeping everything in sync. Yes. All right, Peter, put it on the calendar.
Yeah, I'll send you a link after the call or tomorrow, and we can plan it again.
Great. Okay.
All right, nice, folks. It's been a pleasure catching up with you guys, and learning about different stuff, and looking forward to the next one. So, see, for the listeners, catch us sometime again in the future. I don't have anything planned for the next 2 weeks, so maybe the next one will be FreeBSD, maybe not. But follow the channel, subscribe to the channel below, and then follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. I think I will put our links on the comment section so you can easily find us. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.